You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. So glad you could join me here today on this Motivation and Mindset Monday, where I'm excited to share with you 10 sayings, 10 phrases that I need for you to remove from your vocabulary. And these are dangerous sayings that are holding people back from achieving the things they want in life, whether it be relationship-wise, love-wise, spirituality, emotional health, physical health, body transformation, spirituality, you name it. There are sayings that we subconsciously say, we're not aware of them, but they come up in our everyday life and they're programming our mind. They're continuing to play on loop all of the reasons why we are not going to ever achieve the things that we so desperately want. So I'm going to take you through 10 that I've seen in my everyday practice, my everyday life, and of course myself. I mean, all of these things that I talk about with you are based as well in what maybe, in one shape or another, what I went through as well and what I still deal with from time to time. Because I don't think that any one of us were really meant to be perfect. Some people may seem perfect on the outside, but no matter what, on the inside, there's always a few things that people are working through. And the reason is it's part of life. It's a journey that we're all on. And I don't think that we're supposed to be perfect. Literally, if you woke up tomorrow and you had accomplished all of your goals and you had really hit the pinnacle, I don't know what else there would be left to live for. Meaning like you're there, you're someone that's accomplishing. It doesn't always have to be doing, it can simply be being. But there's a reason for your being, and that's what it's all about. That's where the striving comes from. It does not always have to be from objectively hitting a goal, but living the life that you want. That's really what it's all about. And again, what I want to do today is look at it from a different perspective. I'm not going to talk about the goal setting today. I'm not going to talk about goal achieving. I'm not going to talk about reprogramming necessarily the subconscious mind, except for the fact that when you catch yourself saying these phrases, you can relate it to what you're speaking about. Okay, this is going to make a little bit more sense in a moment. Meaning that in some areas of your life, these phrases will be uttered and you will know that those are the areas of your life where there's a blockage. And that blockage is ultimately holding you back from what you want in that particular area. So for example, a very common one would be career or finances or whatever it might be. And I'm going to start with this one first. So the first one, let's just say, because again, like my whole world is health, right? So we'll say that someone's a very successful health coach. And then there's, let's say, a doctor, and they were like, well, that's, that person's just got so lucky that they became so successful with building up a very large online audience, or that they were awarded this and this and this, right? Because maybe that person feels like they have more education or they have more prestige or whatever it is. And they're basically saying that person got lucky. They don't have the schooling that I have. They don't have the education that I have. They don't have the pedigree that I have. They don't come from my background. Maybe the person came from like 3 generations of doctors or something, right? And again, I'm just making this up as an example. I don't know a specific person that I'm relating this to, but I can tell you this, that if that doctor is calling that health coach or practitioner or whatever it might be lucky, then what they're saying is that person ultimately it was dumb luck that they achieved that. They got lucky. But here's the danger behind that. This is extremely dangerous when that person got lucky in getting well. Like let's say that, you have this disease that it's very rare, right? And someone got well with that disease. Oh, well, they got lucky. What the problem with that is it disempowers you, because now you believe it's luck that ultimately achieves your goals. It's luck that will ultimately help you get well or help you achieve the career or help you get into the right relationship. The problem is you're not controlling luck, right? I'll talk about luck on a future Mindset and Motivation Monday because I'm not a big believer in luck for how the majority of people look at it. But here's the thing. if you give over your power of success in any area of your life or field, then that means it's out of your control, which means that you are ultimately not going to work as hard to try to achieve your goal because it's just luck. It's up to the universe. It's up to the world. And you don't necessarily have a say in it. So it's a very dangerous thing to say. Never say someone got lucky. You also don't know the amount of work they put in, the amount of preparation. It might be not like you, right? It might not be, for example, let's say that one doctor went to medical school and then they did postdoctoral work and they did, really great work and they did a residency and all that. Well, that doesn't mean well, let's just say it was a nutritionist, okay? So a very popular nutritionist, they do really well, they help people all over the world. Okay, so that nutritionist, don't discount that they may have put in their 10,000 hours in their own way, through other certifications, through their own internships, etc. They're just the 10,000 hours were just spent differently. And that's why, I talk to people all the time. I know so many brilliant people that, may not have a doctoral degree, but they know their stuff. And they know their stuff better than 99% of a lot of the doctors that I know or a lot of the chiropractors, acupuncturists, etc., right? So I would just want to be careful. I'm using a health-based example, but you could use it for anything. Like, again, someone making a lot of money at their job. If you say that that's luck, then that means that you're giving away your power to make money or finances or career as well. So let's be careful with saying the phrase, that person or he or she is so lucky, all right? That's the first one. The second one is this, and I kind of think that they come together as well. I'll start next week. So when a project comes up, a thought comes up, you might just say it to yourself, oh, okay, I'll start on that next week. I've talked about this before. Next week ultimately never comes. And that's because if you're busy this week, I'm guaranteeing you're busy next week. And if you're busy next week, I'm guaranteeing you're busy that next week as well. How many weeks have you had of the year where you're just like, oh, I have a free week? I just don't know too many people that just say, I have a free week this week. I'll get started on that project. You don't. Life accumulates, right? That's why I'm always big on detoxes. And it's just because during a detox week for myself as well, and I think our community is starting on the 24th of this month or so, it's a week for me to also decompress. My first 2 fasting days, my liquid fast days, I'm not going to probably be going to the gym as much. Maybe I'll do one workout, but not as heavy. It'll be a week for me to go really simple with my foods. I'm going to get to bed earlier. It's a real decompression week. So what I'm trying to say is this. It's all about prior planning. So if you're telling me this, okay, I'm going to start next week. I need you not to start next week. Next week might be the start to actually physically doing. But at the moment, when you get that idea, I need you to start right away. That's when motivation's hot. Really, really important. We see this in the fitness industry. If a client is thinking about getting started with personal training or with a yoga practice or with a martial arts practice or whatever it might be, and they're really motivated, but they've been thinking about it a long time, you'll talk yourself out of it if you don't get started right away. So, wherever you are in the world, meet with a personal trainer, right? Do that if that's what you wanted to do. Or meet with the golf pro if you wanted to learn golf, or meet with the pianist if you wanted to learn how to play the piano. Like, that's what it's all about. It's set up the appointment at least. Maybe you're not going to start training today, playing the piano today, but call the person, set up the consultation. You don't have to make the full commitment, but take an action. So one example in my life is probably like every 6 to 8 times a year. So every month and a half or so, every 6 to 8 weeks or so, there'll be a night where I get into bed. And as I get into bed, I'm just doing my relaxation-based breathing. And again, it's natural now. I don't get in bed and say, okay, now I'm going to start my relaxation breathing. It's just, you do it over and over, and it simply becomes part of your life. That's what a habit is. So I've made these habits and I naturally just relax my nervous system. I'm lying on my back to start. I'm just feeling my belly go up and down. I'm really relaxing my body, getting down into that eventually theta-based states, right? So as I go to roll into my left side, I try to sleep on my left side, which is good for the lymphatic system, good for your heart, and good for digestion. So as I'm rolling over after I start to feel a little bit tired, which takes maybe just a couple minutes, and I let my mind just drift. And as my mind is drifting into that theta-based state, you start to move into the subconscious. That's what the theta-based state essentially is. So at this point, anything that my mind's kind of working on is working through maybe problems, or I kind of call it shuffling the papers at the end of the day. Sleep allows you, good deep sleep allows you to take all of the thoughts and processes of the day and sort them into basically file folders. And then you can eventually retrieve them as needed. And I'll talk about that, I believe, more in the future as well, because I'm not sure that they're actually contained in the actual matter in the brain. I think that there may be a little bit more to that. But again, I'll talk about neuroscience and brain plasticity and how quantum mechanics may work into pulling all of these thoughts. Like, where did the thoughts come from? If you've never had the thought before, how did it get into your head? So I'll talk about that more in the future, which I find very, very fascinating. I love the field of psychology. I mean, I use psychology so much in my practice that I can't say, like, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, okay, I would be a psychologist. But I feel like so much of the work that I do is on the mind. I mean, my de-stress protocol, 2 parts of the 8-part system of the de-stress protocol that I write about in the Rain Barrel Effect are mind-based. I mean, they're psychology-based. And then that's how important I really believe it is. So here's what I'm basically trying to say. If you say, okay, I'll start next week, it should be an immediate trigger that you begin something now. So going back to my stories, I'm drifting off. If I get a thought in my head that's a new thought, such as, let's say I'm working on a case. Every once in a while this happens. I'm working with someone and it's something different. It's something unique that I haven't seen in this way before. So I don't force myself to try to come to that, figuring it out right away. What I do is I do an intake. So I'm listening to the person, I'm listening to their story. Or one of my health coaches works with them, and then they bring me the issue because I do oversee the whole practice. And, what might happen is I'm not thinking about it, but then the answer comes to me. And it's usually a correlation from something I've seen before, because we've seen so much. And I say, oh, that makes sense. And I immediately get out of bed. I know I was drifting off to sleep. I immediately get out of bed and I write down whatever comes to my mind. Now, sometimes, not just on a client case, because it might be fairly straightforward, and I'll kind of like diagram out how I believe it happened and where we need to go. And then, of course, if we need to lab test, we'll lab test. So let's just say it's another thing. Let's say it's curriculum idea for integrative health practitioners or something like that. Okay. So with the integrative health practitioner, I get the idea. I said, oh, I really like that. And then I'll write, and an hour may go by. But I'll tell you right now, I will trade that hour of sleep, that the 1 hour less sleep. And the reason is this, that I got out of bed and I immediately took action. I'm not doing the work. I'm not creating the curriculum yet. Although I have sent messages to my health coaches at midnight before. I'm not expecting them to see them, but while it's fresh, it's there. And what I'm saying is this, though. I'm telling my subconscious and my brain and my body, keep bringing me these ideas. Keep this process going. Because I just moved into this subconscious state. My subconscious brought up this thought, and I'm going to act on it. Again, IHP took 2 years to really work on. It really did. It didn't happen overnight. But what I did was I was working on it in the background. So there wasn't, I'll think about it and start next week. Start immediately, right? Start immediately towards your goals, even if it's just journaling. I can't tell you enough how powerful that is, because you become someone who takes action rather than a procrastinator, and the world rewards that. It really does. It rewards it from your own inside out, because your body says, okay, we're moving somewhere. And I'll tell you this, as you move towards your goals, even if it's just the thought process I outlined, it begins to fire you up with energy. And it's that energy then that spreads into every area of your life. That includes your immune system, right? It includes your hormones. So it's very exciting. And I want more people to start to they don't have to have it all figured out. Just start to diagram it out. Just start to think about it. Create mind maps, journal, etc. Okay. The third one is this. Never say to anyone or yourself, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. It's basically casting out blame to the world, right? So what I usually say is this. If I'm in some type of like back and forth or whatever it might be, I just said, I don't know if this is my fault or not, but I'm at least some portion to blame here, right? And when I say blame, I'm not looking to put someone down and shame them. That should never happen in our society. There should be open dialogue and discussion. I don't like the divisions we're creating within, people, tribes, etc. in the world. I just don't think it's very healthy. So if I'm in some type of disagreement, etc. with someone, I at least say, part of this is my fault, okay? I don't know how much, but I know part of it is because there was a disagreement, right? And now it's maybe harmless, maybe it's miscommunication. But what I do is rather than turn this into something vengeful that's going to take a lot of my energy as well, I just say, you know what? Better for me to take responsibility, reach out to the person or whatever it might be and just say, listen, I don't know exactly where the miscommunication came from. Here were my intentions, and please let me know if I came off in the wrong way. It's not what I intended. Now, if the person still comes back with venom, I just say, I can appreciate where you're coming from, and we'll keep it at that. And I don't keep going back and forth. That person then is just removed from my sphere. Because some people, honestly, they just want to argue. And they're so down themselves. They're so hurt themselves. They're just looking to take it out on others. They're not ready yet. And now I wish them well, and I hope that they're ready soon, but they're not ready yet to move to a level where they can meet you halfway or even just extend their hand after you've already extended yours. Some people aren't ready. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And so that's okay. After that, here's the thing. We can both say, I can say, and you can say if you've been in the situation, I tried. I did actually try. And because of that, I can sleep at night. Like that's literally how I live my life. If there's ever a discussion like with my team or work, here's the easiest thing I do. And everyone can tell you this for my team, whether it's, our personal training nutrition studio in Boston, our functional medicine practice in Boston, or anywhere online. If someone has a question for me, it always is this: what's best for the client? What does the client want out of this? And if it's reasonable, we do it. If it's unreasonable, it's unreasonable, and we can't do it. I can't make things happen that are so totally unreasonable. Like that just can't happen. But the bottom line is this: I sleep really well at night because I say, okay, hey, it costs more money to do third-party testing. I'm going to do it anyway. It costs more money to do, this expedited shipping, but people want their packages in a couple of days. So I'm just going to pay for that. Like we charge $4.95 for shipping at Equilibrium Nutrition under $99. It costs way more money than $4.95. We're not Amazon, right? So, when you look at, but what's best for the person, right? So always just put yourself out there. It is my fault. Things are my fault. I'm going to take ownership. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to move forward. It's one of those things. And look for how you might be able to use that in your life as well. All right. This one goes along with it. Sometimes you say, well, it's not my fault. You might end up with also I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it happen. And when you say, I can't, I cannot, and whatever word you put after that, you're just basically, the program's already in you, right? That's already in the subconscious that you can't do it. But you're reinforcing that every time you use that language. Language is very important. There's a study of psychology called neuro-linguistic programming. I can't recommend it enough. I'm not a neuro-linguistic master by any means, but it's something that I studied along my way. I don't think that I use it specifically, and I certainly don't coach people on it, but neuro-linguistic programming shows you how powerful your words are. And I think this is really important. Now your words can change your thoughts, and your thoughts can come out as certain words. So when you say, I can't, you're disempowering yourself again. I don't want to hear that out of you. I really don't. You could say this: I haven't yet figured out the answer, but I'm working on it. So far, I haven't achieved this goal, but I haven't given up. Or this time it didn't work out, but I'm going to look for another way to achieve this. So what you need to do is you don't necessarily have to discount where you're at. You don't have to pretend that you achieved it, but you can say this: there are only so many ways that I can mess up, I can fail, whatever you want to call it, before I achieve my goal. I mean, that's really how I live my life. I don't mind making mistakes. I tell my team that all the time. Listen, we can make all the mistakes that we want as long as we learn from them, we grow, and we don't make them a second time. If we make them a second time, why? What's the breakdown? And then we look at it from there. Where's the breakdown that this is happening? So for you, and I talk about this with weight loss and wellness all the time, how many different ways are there to lose weight? Like most things, a half a dozen to a dozen maximum. You can look at hormones, you can look at blood sugar, you can look at cortisol, you can look at thyroid, HPA axis dysfunction, you can look at calories in, you can look at calories out through exercise. I mean, there's not that many ways. There really isn't. What about high cholesterol? Okay, you can look again at Cortisol, you can say inflammation, but what's causing the inflammation? You can even look at things like high food sensitivities. You can look at dysaerobic formation of the cells. There's more cellular breakdown. Your body's producing more cholesterol from the liver. I mean, there is only so many things that causes high cholesterol or high blood pressure or autoimmune. So if you work the process, you're going to get there. Now, maybe you didn't get there in the 21 days you hope, right? But that's okay. I mean, it really is. Because if you work all the possibilities, let's say over a 4-month or 6-month period, even say it takes you a year. If you work the processes over a year, I'm telling you, you'd be hard pressed to not achieve most of your goals within a year. A year passes pretty quickly anyways. Why not work the process? That's how I look at it. All right. Another one is this that goes along with that. It's like I just can't do it. You don't want to disempower yourself, but also don't blame time. All of us have the same time. I did a podcast. You can go to stephencabral.com/podcasts. And I just want you to type in 6 hours because I did a podcast not too long ago, and you'll find it there. You can just scroll back to where it says MM on the page, and those are the Mindset and Motivation Mondays. But I did a podcast on how we all really have an extra 6 hours a day. Most people don't look at it that day. That podcast will break it down for you. And that will allow you to see that everyone is given the same 24 hours. Take out 8 for sleep if you want. How many do you have after that? 16. Take out how many hours for work. Subtract. That's what you have left, right? Now, some of it, of course, is going to be allocated to family, to parents, to children, to whatever it might be, right? Extra work, etc. There's some time in there. And anything that's so important to you that needs to be a priority, it can get a little bit of that time. So let's not use time as the excuse, because if time is the excuse, everything will always slip away. You won't have time for anything. But I'll tell you what, we all make time for our priorities. So all we have to do is we're not saying that we don't have time. We're saying that this right now is not at the top of my priority list. And that's a really good thing to say, because you can say, well, if it's not at the top of my priority list, I'm not going to get it done. So is it really that important to me? Because sometimes, you know what? It's really not. So at that point, let it go for right now. Put it in your journal, revisit in 4 months or 6 months, revisit every 90 days. If it's important then you'll get started. I do that all the time. I mean, I really do. I say, you know what? Because I don't have any time in my day. Honestly, there's no time left. And so I can't take on a lot of new things. But there's a lot more that I want to do. But it's not so important that it could push aside what I'm currently doing right now. So I basically say all things in all good time. And that allows me to say, when the time is right, when it's that important, I will move forward. So again, right now, my 2 young daughters are very, very big and important. So they're a big glowing ball of my life that I have to pay attention to. And that's because I've always told myself that when I do have children, that is the most important thing. And it has to be given my time and attention, because really, what else do they want from me besides my time and attention? And that's very, very important. So I have to live up to that, even though it can take time away from other things that I'm doing. But I also look at it as that I have my 2 young girls for how long? A lot of people say till 18 years, but not really, right? Because when I was a teenager, I was kind of on autopilot. That's what my parents said. I would go with my friends. I would play sports after school. So they saw me for what? Well, they saw me for dinner, and then I was gone all weekend. And so, I look at it as I have a certain amount of time where my girls are young, and all the work stuff and all the travel and all the other stuff, I'll be able to do that. And I'll be able to do more of that if I choose to when they move out of the house. And kind of right now I'm feeling like I hope they never do, but all that eventually does happen. And so that's why all in good time. We'll make everything happen, but let's take the top priorities, right? Let's focus on what's most important right now. Okay. The next one is this. And this is really, really big, right? You can't say, oh, it's just not fair. Life isn't fair. I was passed over for this. All of the great people, in relationships are already taken. These things are always said. But here's the thing. Again, if you say that it's not fair, that is disempowering. Today's podcast is meant to empower you. You are in control. You're taking control. Really, this is what it's all about. And so fair has nothing to do with it. Life is sometimes not fair. But how? How is life not fair? Were you passed over? Well, how do you know you being passed over for a job, a promotion, etc., is not to your benefit in the future? You just don't know it yet. I bet you can think back in your past where you thought it was the end of the world, something was happening, and then you realize, well, here's all the good that came out of it. Same with health. I was sick for a decade. There was no need for me to be sick for 10 years. There was no need for me to struggle through what should have been, that a lot of people consider, the prime years of their life. You know, right? You're 17 years old to 27 years old. Pretty much the prime of your life, right? I had to push through it like I was in weighted boots every day because my body was completely depleted. I had nothing left. I was sick all of the time. I had joint pain all of the time. I had swollen glands all of the time. I was bloated all of the time. It was terrible. I continued to push through. But now I have this deep appreciation for life. And also, now I can say, I'm going to move through 40s, my 50s, my 60s and beyond with lots of energy, lots of gratitude, lots of perspective. And I have no doubt that's going to supply me with endless energy because I know the opposite of that. And that's what we need. We need that perspective as well. So sure, it wasn't fair per se for me to be sick for 10 years as a young kid. Couldn't figure it out. Doctors told me it was all in my head, all of those things. But, you know, like I look at it as like, look what happened. I get to now live my dream job. But I didn't even know what my dream job was back then. I didn't know anything about health. I didn't know anything about nutrition. So it's really important to look at things like, well, sometimes life really is fair, right? We just don't see it from that perspective right away. All right, just a couple more. And it's this. Along with, you know, moving through your day and just saying like, I don't want to do this, couple things. One, you get to do it. You get to do things in life. So that's the thing is like, even if you have a job that you don't like, how many more people would want your job? How many people are unemployed and need a job? How many people didn't come from the background that you come from? No matter what background it is, right? You get to do it. You get to do these things in life. You get to go to the gym. You get to be on the diet plan. You get to detox. You get to listen to podcasts. You get to read articles. You get to make money from a job, right? You get to live in a home or rent a home. I mean, even if like you don't like it or it's not to your level that you believe that you should be at, you're given this as a gift. You're getting to do it and other people don't. So, you know, all of this where I'm not getting to do what my life's mission is. I don't get to do that yet. Well, yeah, not yet. Not yet. That's it. But you will, as long as you're not satisfied with where you're at now, but you have gratitude and perspective to be able to move forward. It could be much worse. That's the perspective. Think about it. You know people where it's worse. And the gratitude is, you're not where you want to be yet, but life's still pretty good, right? In the grand scheme of things, life's pretty good. It could be worse. So this also, though, should energize you because another term is this like, oh, I'm too tired to do that. Well, sometimes everybody's tired, right? At the end of the day, sometimes you don't want to do those things. You don't want to, you know, sometimes my wife and I are both tired at the end of the day and our girls are bonkers and off the wall. Well, we don't really want to parent at that time. You know, we don't want to make the right decisions. We don't always want to read the books to our girls, but we realize like, again, this is a finite period of time. Everybody's tired. And this is also the right thing to do. And it's also the thing we have to do. If we want to try to raise our girls right, we have to do it even when we don't want to. Neither one of us are perfect parents. I'm far from a perfect individual, but I'm just trying to do my best. That's it. And I know that I'll mess up along the way with everything, right? But at least I can say, I'm trying to do my best. So when you're tired, you still try. Now, again, I'm not talking about wellness or health. Of course, if you have HPA axis dysfunction, chronic fatigue, you have fibromyalgia-based issues, you have Addison's disease, it's a different story, right? Low thyroid. You do have to correct that. But for the most time, a lot of times we're tired because we're not in pursuit of a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. So when I'm tired, I say, maybe I'm not focused on the right thing right now. And again, sometimes they're just tasks. You have to get them done. But what gets me back on track and what re-energizes me is making sure, yes, I'm getting my sleep, I'm getting my right foods, I'm taking my supplements, I'm doing those things, but that I'm moving forward towards something, that I feel like I'm growing. And that to me is absolutely tremendous. So what I wanted to do today was really look at a lot of your self-talk, And when it is negative, or you don't even believe it's negative, but they're like, oh, I'm too tired, or, it's, I'll start next week, or I just can't do it, or it's not fair, or they got so lucky, or, it's another one is like, oh, it's easy for you to say because you came from this. Again, that disempowers you. Today's podcast is this. You don't know everyone's background. You don't know where they came from, and you don't even know where you're going yet. So what I need you to do is think about this. There are endless possibilities for you in your life. That's it. You can make pretty much any of them come true if you're willing to reframe your thinking. You reframe your thinking about yourself, reframe your thoughts about the world, begin to reprogram your mind, and simply start by getting your self-awareness and your thought process on point. And that means this: as these thoughts start to creep up in you, even if you don't verbalize them, that you begin to say, oh, this correlates to this. And yes, this is one of those areas of my life that I don't feel myself moving forward. What do I need to do? Well, what I need to do is believe first it's a possibility. And second, not what's the end, but what's that first step? What's the first step that I can take today that's going to energize me to be able to take the second step? What is that second step that's going to lead to the third, the fourth, and the fifth? And before you know it, you have already created a new habit, which is reinforcing a new mindset that's going to ultimately lead you to your goal. And that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for tuning into another Mindset and Motivation Monday. Always a pleasure being able to speak with you every single Monday on this topic of psychology and the movement of moving forward in life. So, as always, if this podcast was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.